Hi guys, Luton here, and I'm back with this new revised series of Below the Line. Below the Line is the series where I look at your comments below the video, so below the line. And each episode, the first half is dedicated to me answering your replies from the previous topic, and then the second half is me introducing a new topic for you to comment on. Then in the next video, I'll look at the comments you've made today, and I'll discuss and highlight those in the video. They don't always have to be comments that agree with me, they just have to be good, constructive comments. And I should say today, there was a lot of feedback around the issue of the Star Wars Battlefront loot crates. Unsurprisingly, there was many comments. So I've selected even more than usual. Some of them I literally just need to kind of check and agree with. You'll see as we go along. But thank you very much, guys, for getting so involved in the last video. So with that, let's crack straight into the comments. And of course, the same day we did have that response from EA, so I've included some of the replies there too. So to start off, Tobias Stone says, guys, we might have seen the apex of gaming over the DayZ mod period, Battlefield 3, Bad Company 2, GTA 5, Arma 3, and then things just going south from there. It's been a fun ride, but it looks like there's only room for Battle Royale games and pay-to-win AAAs made by fat cats in its corporate sky towers. Rest in peace gaming. I think a little too soon to judge on that one, quite honestly, but I did think there was an interesting thing to be made there, which is that, you know, it may well be that, yeah, you look back and you kind of go, wow, that was a really amazing period of time where they were sort of pushing the boundaries, but it hadn't sort of been capitalized on completely to a degree. An interesting thing is that, yeah, obviously with the success of PUBG, there seemingly are a lot more Battle Royale games coming out now. It's like going to be the new thing. So it's like, damn, if you thought you'd seen enough Battle Royale games, you haven't seen nothing yet, I don't think. Okay, next up we got Rifty, who says, hey LT, couldn't agree with you more on your stance about loot boxes. One thing I will say is I do not think this is as bad as season passes. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying one is good and bad. One was literally game destroying, the other slightly less so, because I was saying about, are season passes worse, is this worse? He says, at least in this system it keeps the entire player base together. You can earn all those star cards in game without paying. Yes, it is a huge early advantage to payers, not arguing about that, but you could not game your way into the new maps for season pass and DLC. So I think that's a good point and some interesting points to think about there. Okay, next up, regular feature Rob Enter, always on these videos. I completely understand your frustrations. It seems so often with EA and DICE and other game devs that when we take one step forward, we must also take two back. With the advent of post-launch DLC, developers have been trying to walk a fine line between maximizing profits and avoiding community backlash. I think that is a super accurate statement. He says, okay, fair enough. We can't blame them for wanting to make some cash, but one can't help but shake one's head after seeing that after all the fanfare they've received for that announcement that DLC maps would be free, they decided to introduce a totally unnecessary pay-to-win mechanic into the game. No matter how negligible the effects may or may not be, that was a big point that I was making this week as well when I was discussing with other people. It is not about like how much of a degree it is simply the fact that it is there. That is the bad thing. You can say, oh, it won't have that much of an effect. It's not the point. It is not the point. And if you think it is, you're missing the point. He says, even if it does end up not being that much of an advantage, there is still a stigma associated with pay to win and damage is done. Not only damage done, but I think it lays the foundations for things to get worse. He says, even if they get rid of it, it still leaves you with the stink of greed. DICE, please. I don't know whether, we can't say DICE or, we don't know who's calling the shots on this decision there. Okay, next up, Craig Tennyson, who says, as a Star Wars fan, this loot box system has really angered me. I was looking forward to playing the beta to see how much of the system would work and hoped it wouldn't have that much of an impact, but it is massive. Now, bear in mind, of course, they have said that they will tweak it since the beta, but again, even with the details that they have told us, I say it's difficult to speculate. The fact that the progression system is designed as an RNG loot box system is disgusting, and I don't understand how people can defend a system like that. It is obviously pay to win. The saddest thing is that they're not going to change it and they'll sell lots of copies with the Star Wars brand. This is probably the reason they decided to put this system in, because they'll most likely get away with it with all the fanboys buying into EA's bullshit. He says, another thing I've got to add is that you can find packs for the paid currency if you type in Battlefront 2 crystals. You'll find an Amazon page, and the packs on it, I found an image on Twitter showing them as $99. Yeah, it's all speculative at this time, I would imagine. And, who knows what's going on with that. I doubt that's for real. But, I think the only thing to say in regards to this stuff is that, they have said they're going to tweak some elements to it. Literally, time will tell. Okay, another regular for this series is Timothy. He says, I don't think microtransaction loot boxes should be in any game other than gambling games. If a developer wants to sell cosmetics, I'd rather see bundles or single skin sales like League of Legends. Having the progression of a class tied together with the contents of loot boxes makes it not fun. Hell, I didn't even like the experience boosts you could get back in Battlefield 3 or 4. If you look at the recently released Shadow of War, even a single player game starts to implement microtransaction loot boxes, which are essentially gear upgrades, so you can skip grinding parts. You can't even get those loot boxes by playing the game. What the hell are they thinking about? Of course, there's been a lot of outrage about that. To make matters worse, it has a season pass as well. It is shocking, like, where devs and producers think they can get away with this stuff now. It is actually mind-boggling. And like I said, the worst part is of people that just don't seem to care, or that people that defend it. People that defend it are actually harming gaming, and that is a really terrible thing. And I say anybody that's defending this kind of stuff is damaging gaming, and that goes for producers, and that goes for game players as well. You know, for whoever it is that's saying, hey, it's all okay. No, they are damaging gaming, and they're damaging your experience. Now, often when I do these series, I have like a good mixed bag of people that disagree with me. Perhaps unsurprisingly, not so much this time around. But Callan here says that honestly, the cards don't change that much about the game. You make it seem like the more cards you get, the more invincible you are, and that is just not true. I don't think I ever said anything about being invincible. I understand the frustration and would agree with you if the cards did more to shift the fairness of the game. Pretty sure that they do, but they really don't. I played the beta extensively on multiple platforms and saw very little difference between people who had a lot of cards and people who had none. It all comes down to how well you can play the actual game. Now, for me, see, this is one of these things. This is where people are missing the point. And I had some discussions on Twitter similar to this. It is not necessarily about how badly it affects your experience in the game. Your experience is not necessarily the most important issue here. The most important issue is what they are trying to do, what they wanted to do, and the fact that they are allowed to even do it, even in a diminished capacity, means that next time around, they will try and see how they can get away with it. They're probably already now thinking like how they can tweak it and work it so they can get away with the most possible without having people freak out. Okay, yeah, another really regular guy here, MC Jammy Dodger. One other thing, Jammy, you can see he's got like a big comment here. I am very happy to add big comments in, and there were quite a few actually on the videos, but a lot of people just wrote gigantic walls of text. I'm not going to read walls of text, so because one, it's difficult to read, and two, it just doesn't look great. So if you would like to add a long comment, please do that, but please format it properly, guys, so that I can actually read it. So Jamie says, having this pay-to-win system in game doesn't bother me much, and here's why. If someone does spend a lot of money on loot crates, it probably means they don't have a lot of time to unlock the crates through playing normally. That's debatable, you know, that's really kind of circumstantial, but it's a fair point. Since they haven't had much time to practice, when they come up against a player like myself who will have spent many hours in the game, I'll still beat them in a battle because skill and knowledge of the game will trump slightly more powerful star cards. Again, that is debatable, but I hear where you're coming from. The more money people spend on crates, the more content I get post-launch for free. If I see someone with a more powerful weapon or star card, I'm not going to care whether they bought it with real world money or through playtime. How someone else unlocks an item doesn't bother me, as long as I can unlock these items by playing, I'm okay. Now, again, just to refer back to what I said before and repeatedly recently, it is not about your personal specific experience. It's about the trend of enabling and allowing companies to implement systems like this, and that later down the line, when they sort of start to kind of, you know, gently implement these things over time, and then before you know it, you're in a system where it's literally that's all it is about, and then you're screwed, you know. So it's like, and you might say, well, okay, well, if they were to do that, people would freak out in a really huge way. Maybe they would, but you see, like I've said, if they develop it where they implement that ahead of time as one of the core elements in the game, when they actually come to release it, they're just going to be like, sorry guys, suck it up. And you know, also it's about normalizing it. It's about normalizing these kind of things. And over time, the majority of the players, as you already start to see, people don't, you know, they get way too defensive about it, and the more defensive they don't sort of, you know, so people are not willing even to challenge it at that point, and then you're just lumbered with it. But then he goes on to say, this is what does bother me though. In the beta, everything to unlock can only be unlocked through random loot crates, and again, this is a really big issue. This means I cannot work towards a specific item I want. I just have to hope I get lucky with the random number generator. DICE EA have stated since that they're going to allow higher level cards to be unlocked through challenges, which is better, but I like all weapons and star cards to be unlocked through progression. I think everybody would agree on that. Also, the class rank is calculated based on star cards I have, not how well I performed with the class, and since those cards can only be unlocked through crates, my class rank is essentially randomly assigned for me, and so means nothing. again, you know, these are some of the points that people are missing, and it is critically important, and people need to understand how hard they're getting fucked over. I don't mind that people can buy crates, but just let me be able to unlock these items through a standard and hopefully challenging progression system as well. It's true, and that's where you really sort of start to bleed this line between like gambling and game playing, and it's like it's such a questionable line that I don't think anybody really wants. So, you know, I mean, for all the people that are being really defensive about this and saying like it's going to be alright, it's going to be alright, what is good about it? There's a lot of people who are talking down how bad it's going to be, like saying, oh, it's not going to be too bad, guys, don't panic, it's going to be okay. That's not the point. Don't tell me how not bad it's going to be. Tell me why it's good. Why is this a good system in the game? Why is this beneficial? Why should this system exist in the game? Tell me that. Don't tell me how not bad it is. Okay, Pedro coming in with a pretty solid one as well. Going to throw my 2 cents on this one, LT. Gaming industry sees the unlockable content, be it through crates or season passes, as a way to keep the average gamer teenager interested in the game. I don't think it's fair to say just teenagers, that's a bit of a characterization, at release, so it doesn't lose numbers after a few weeks. The whole idea of having content that gives an advantage to the user in a multiplayer scenario is just bonkers. It definitely is. Why not have it set so it's only cosmetic function? Again, a lot of people say this. I'm not so sure whether I'm even okay with that now, but I know it's the lesser of evils. Lots of people will still continue to play to unlock them all, but it won't give that player a distinguishable advantage over others and keep the interest in the game. Progression should be based on teamwork. It's multiplayer after all, unless it's a free for all, you know, he's basically saying free to play game, where the objectives are to take, hold, defeat opposition as a team. Where you have the PvE scenario, the unlockable content boosts your character in the correct way so that you can move up a progression ladder and fight tougher opponents, such as in something like WoW. Games that offer all the content from the start and focus on the game objective, in my view, offer a better sense of achievement when the objective is completed. The game should not be a method or means to unlock content as its main objective, but sadly this is too readily seen in games as it's a money maker for developers and dilutes the availability of good team games in the industry. And you know, again, I can kind of see where you're coming from there. It definitely is a thing, this kind of reward system where it's like every little bit, every little bit, every little bit. And it's kind of like you upgrade a little bit to the next upgrade, the next upgrade, the next upgrade, and that really is like a sort of an addictive tendency, because what it is, it's like you're giving the crumbs to each little step up, and it's like that's where, well, I mean, but that's nothing new. That's just been the staple for games forever. That's why games are addictive. Okay, who's next? It's Cyanogen. Man, I really punished myself with a lot of long comments this week. The reality is that the majority of players will still buy the game. Also, by the way, isn't it interesting the length of the amount of comments on this? People really care about this, and that should be a signifier for you. The reality is the majority of players will still buy the game just because there aren't many top tier games out there. This is a good point always. As far as for me, I'm not buying this or new COD or new Forza or anything that costs 40 or more quid, as it has microtransaction loot box bullshit. I wouldn't mind if the game was free to play and there were no major advantages to paid content, and if you knew exactly what you pay for, like in most MMO games where there's an option to just buy stuff. I said this before, but it's only acceptable if the game is free to play. The stuff we get from loot box in games like CSGO, Overwatch and Battlefront 2 is practically gambling, because you just don't know what you're paying for. Hell, I would be less enraged if they would blatantly put stuff behind a paywall just because there would not be this stupid randomness aspect to it. I've kind of said that too, and I kind of agree. I think it's like, again, lesser of two evils. If they just straight up were like, hey guys, you want a big boost? Bang, here you go. It would still be shitty, but it's not as bad as just, hey, you know, you might win, you might lose. To the people who defend cosmetic-only microtransactions, fuck no. We should not accept that either, and this is what I've been saying, because I'm sure as hell not going to play a game in which I'm given a shitty-looking character. Full-price games must have all content accessible without any random shit. Leave that to free-to-play games. I also loathe it when companies make more than one season passes, like fucking Ubisoft loves to do. Yeah, it's true. Sorry for the rant. Question to you is, will you ask other YouTubers you happen to know, like Level Cap, to boycott the game publicly? That would be the right thing to do, I presume. Well, it is not my place to tell other YouTube producers what they should do with their channels. What I can do is I can put my opinion out there, and then if you guys happen to watch other producers, then you can voice your opinions to those producers on their channels. That's how YouTube works. So if you agree with content they make, then you can like it and tell them why you like it. If you disagree with their stuff, you can tell them why you dislike it. That's how it works. But it's not up to me to dictate what happens on other people's channels. But I can, in certain uncertain terms, strongly on my channel, tell you exactly what I think, and that's what I've been doing this week. Okay, thank God, finally a small one. Autofire says, very rarely do I agree with you. Oh, I remember why I put this one in here. Okay, so look, I'll explain this. Autofire says, very rarely do I agree with you, LT, but you're spot on with this. I really just want to play a campaign, but the price tag doesn't justify it. Unfortunately, people will buy it, and they'll spend their own money to make them the greatest, and the game will die off as quick as the first one did. The executives at EA don't care about that course. They'll have had their profit-related bonuses by then. Now, the main reason why I included Autofire's comment was not because he just at the beginning goes, oh, hey, LT, you're right about this. But it is kind of related to that. The main reason why is because he says, very rarely do I agree with you, but you're spot on with this. What I like there is that it's very unusual in the world we live in now for anybody to admit that they normally disagree with one thing, but then they agree now, if you see where I'm coming from. People very resistant to sort of admitting that they sort of are on the other side of the line on this specific situation. People usually like to be like, this is where I stand and I will not move, or I will not falter at any point. This is what I think, and I don't want to hear your argument. So I really appreciate it when people are open-minded, and I appreciate it when people can say to me, and again, this is why I say I like to have people can disagree and agree with me at the same time. People can say to me, well, actually, LT, I don't think you're right about this. Fine, no worries, go ahead and do that. But it is really good sometimes to just be able to say, like, hey, you know what, I disagree with you a lot, but on this thing, I think you're right, and here's why. It's much better. Then you're having a conversation, then you're having a discussion, a proper discussion, and not just, a polarized, one-sided discussion, which arguably is not even worth having. And often that's where we are nowadays. So that's why I really appreciate this comment. Okay, next up, Whiskey Tango says they don't actually care. They just care about selling and maximizing profits. Sounding a little bit cynical there, Whiskey. Before the fiscal quarter is over to appease investors, they only need a minority of players to pay for microtransactions to rake in the profits. People literally spend thousands on games with predatory business models like this. This is the point that I'm making, you see. It's not about, I think there was one YouTube channel I was watching in response to this whole issue, and he was going like, I've spoken to all my friends and none of my friends say that they're going to do this and blah, blah, blah. Dude, missing the point by a wide margin. It's about the smaller percentage of people who end up spending a ton of money and how terrible that is. Just look at the garbage mobile market. It's a good thing we're starting to see some high-profile indie games like Hellblade, Divinity Original Sin 2 being wildly successful without a publisher. Let's hope this is the new trend. It is a new trend. I've seen other devs as well go down that line where they don't have a producer. But again, a well-made point, even though, like I say, you get that classic sin, it's all about the money. It's a business. They want to make money. But the whole thing is, it's about that kind of small percentage. It literally is the freemium South Park, like I said before. It's the bit where the guy's explaining it on the whiteboard and he's going like, you've got to find like the small percentage of the high users. He's like, you think that we don't know about it? They're counting on it. He's like, it's like the alcohol industry. It's the same thing. It's about exploiting those high-end users who want to spend all their money. And that's what's so terrible. That's what's so terrible ethically about it. It's a really shitty principle. It's a terrible concept, and that alone should be reason. Forget about your experience. That alone is reason to say that it is wrong and it shouldn't be in the game. Okay, next up, Legion says that blog post is just standard issue. This was the response post that they made. It's just standard issue corporate BS. Companies seem to vomit as soon as they realize that they've fucked up. It makes me sick. But again, this is kind of what you can expect from EA. Give us some concrete facts, give us numbers, give us dates and so on. Again, I can hear where you're coming from, but I think, if you disconnect from your emotion for a bit, and it's like, I'm guilty of being way too emotional about things sometimes as well. But it's like, if you disconnect, you got to remember, it's like, you just expect it. It's a big company. It's what big companies do. They have whole departments who justify their paychecks by doing this kind of stuff. It is what it is. Okay, Kilroy says, literally just finished writing my previous comment, for fuck's sake. More goddamn achievements and challenges. If there's one thing this game needs more of, it's grinding annoying achievements. Again, like I spoke about. He says, so much fun to grind a completely arbitrary and repetitive challenge and achievement. Could developers and publishers please take a look at how the old classic games did it, which is by making everything unlocked from the start. I don't know if that's technically true, but I kind of am erring towards that being a good thing now. Leaving the player to customize the gameplay rather than to fucking grind a scope. The number one advocate for progression is that it adds more to do, giving the game a longer life essentially. So why didn't you just focus on making the game fun instead? Okay, now staying on topic of achievements, Craig says that the Sniper Town Battlefield 4 to unlock the Gold Magnum, like I said, was awful. He says, I'm one of many who still hasn't unlocked that damn gun. Weapon assignments are a bad idea in any series. He says Battlefield, but any series. If players are moaning that there's not enough progression and say weapon assignments was a way for progression, it's total BS. DLC weapons that you pay for should be available straight away from the get-go after we've paid for them. I totally agree. Just pay, have the gun, done. You know, who gives a shit about doing whatever to get them? Just give it. Says, didn't buy Battlefront 1 or 2, neither until EA start treating their customer base properly. Might be waiting a little while there. Liquid says, when somebody says don't panic, it's usually time to panic. Call me a cynic, but I think when they purposely showed a really shitty loot crate system, knowing gamers would come down like a ton of bricks on them, then they moderately reduce the shittiness, and everybody says, look, we made them take a backward step, like a big victory for us. A little bit tinfoil hat there, Liquid, but anything's possible, but I'm not so sure. That seems like a big risk to take, you know, that could have blown up on them way worse than it did. He says, I wouldn't trust EA as far as I could throw them, boycotted all their games since BF4, not about to reverse that decision. This incident has in fact increased my utter disdain for them. Again, and that's a good point. That's exactly why I say, you know, if you've kind of proven your own point there. You know, it's like counterproductive. Do you know what I mean? Okay, final comment goes to Giradine, who says having no cards versus buying hundreds of cards at max rank compared to rank 1 doesn't change the fact that you can buy more cards and be better than others. Also note the wording, you have to rank up to use them, not get them. So someone not buying the crates will still rank up, but he most likely won't have many cards, and since the cards are random, highly unlikely he's going to be able to even use those cards while ranking up. But somebody buying crates all the time will most likely have hundreds of cards of all levels, so have the max number of cards for every rank, making him better than the ones not buying cards at every stage of the game. It's well thought out there. He says it is not balancing it at all, it's making it look like it's balanced for the stupid people that don't play those games or know how a system like that works. But trust me, this did not balance the game at all. In fact, since cards are random and can be any rank required, it's actually much worse than before, as the person not buying cards most likely will have cards too high ranked for him, while the one that does buys the crates to get all kinds of cards high and low ranking. That's an interesting point of view, Giradine. And you know, I think it goes to show as well that, you know, there's a lot of different opinions about this, and the uncertainty of opinions, it's going to be curious where it comes down this. And it's also, this is why I did another video where I was saying about YouTubers being complicit in this, because a lot of YouTube producers are going to be like, you know, dousing the flames of this issue, because again, like I said on that video, it's about YouTube producers as well wanting to ensure that this is a good, smooth release. They want it to be a good game, not just for themselves but also for the channels, you know, like I say. So it's a very difficult one to believe people's opinions. Now, I'm not going to straight up say that this is going to be, you know, ruin your player experience. Like I said, my actual personal issue with this is more about the ethics of it, the sort of fundamental core principle of what is happening here. That's my biggest sort of beef with this whole thing. But in terms of the gameplay experience, I think at the least you could say it's going to affect your gameplay experience. To what degree, it's entirely debatable. So I'll leave that one to you guys in comments again. So now we're going to go on and we're going to deal with the next issue. So I'm going to set a topic now and I'm going to talk a little bit about it. Then you guys can respond to me down below in the comments, write your thoughts about that topic, and then I'll be replying back to that as I did here today on Thursday again. So today's issue is talking about, is the oversaturation, is the massive quantity of players in some AAA games actually damaging the gameplay experience? And obviously the one that I've been thinking about this week is Battlefield. Now, it does apply to other games as well, okay? And I've often seen a lot of people commenting when I talk about this saying, hey LT, that's not just related to one game, that's the state of, you know, modern AAA games, where basically the community is so massive that you never get that same feeling of kind of niche focused quality gameplay that you did used to get in the past. And I know some people are going to say that's a bit of nostalgia, a bit of rose tinted glasses, and I don't completely deny that. I think there's probably an element of that in there for sure. On the other hand, I think everybody that I speak to says that there has been a marked deterioration in the quality of massive multiplayer games. Obviously in the sphere that I play mostly is FPS, but I think in general people are saying like this is a large issue. Should developers be doing more to, obviously you can't, you know, obviously you don't want to stop people playing the game. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is, what can you do? What can you do to either help those people to just engage better, or to somehow kind of, you know, give a better experience to the players who want that? Now, I've spoke to a range of people this week around this topic. I even ran a poll on Twitter, which was a very interesting one, and that actually really surprised me, actually. I ran it for 24 hours, and as of right now, it's not even actually finished, the poll itself, but it has, it says the issue of an oversaturated FPS player base, big concern for you. 63% out of 252 votes say yes, it damages gameplay. 37% no, it's the same as ever. So, a couple of hours left on that one, but I think it's pretty definitive that a lot of people think that, yeah, having a gigantic player base for your game actually does damage the gameplay. And again, like I say, we're not about sort of stopping people playing and taking people away or out of the game or anything like that, but it clearly is an issue, and devs should be thinking about like what can they do to sort of make that work. The most proven system that comes to mind is a ladder system, and unbelievably this is actually something that I know producers and myself have been talking about since Battlefield 3, that they should consider some kind of ladder system. And when you think about it, that would be the best way of equalizing the gameplay, because you would have higher skill players playing higher skill players. Obviously, how well it's implemented is going to have a large bearing on how the games play out. But when you look at stuff like Overwatch, when you look at stuff like Rainbow Six Siege, these are the kind of games that we think of when we're thinking about kind of implementing some kind of ladder system. Essentially what you'd be doing is implementing some kind of ranked play system, so that you could still have your free-for-all, everybody gets to play game modes, right, where you can just be any rank and you jump in, just kind of like a quick match free play sort of thing. But you would also have ranked play where people could get more focused, serious gameplay where it stacks you against players of theoretically a similar skill level. But like I say, you would have to very, very carefully implement that system to ensure that it actually did create some balance. But to be quite honest with you, anything is better than nothing, and it would be really, really solid to just see something like that be attempted and brought in, and then at least start the process. So far I don't see really anything that has been tried along these lines. And obviously you do have your stats in Battlefield, you do have your ranking and your skill level and all this kind of stuff, but you'd have to really get into that in a fine detail to try and kind of work out what kind of system could be implemented. And I'd be really interested to actually discuss further with anybody from DICE about like whether something along these lines would be possible. I think it would be really an important thing. Now look, that's not the only thing we can do. Alongside that, we can start to have more community representation, so again, something that I have tried to do in the past, and I actually in the past reached out. You guys remember when I used to constantly host like objective Battlefield team play sessions where I'd host a server and I'd focus on doing that every week. I'm actually considering bringing that back. But in the past, like I say, I actually attempted to reach out to community managers and people like this around EA at the time, and they just didn't care, really. They just didn't care. They just were not interested. They're happy to kind of host gameplay sessions, but they're not interested. And everything that I've done in the past where I've tried to push team play, remember the team play initiative? Remember the team play initiative in Battlefield? That never happened. Everything I've tried to do in the past in terms of pushing team play and objective play has often fallen on deaf ears, which is why this week I was saying like maybe this is my last attempt now at actually attempting it, see whether I can get some traction, because I think it's getting to a point where people are starting to actually wake up and realise that I could see this coming from a mile away for the longest time, but I think people are starting to realise like, hey, it's actually getting really shitty. People are getting sick of playing rounds where people are just running around like headless chickens, and because that community has enlarged, the community player base has enlarged so much, it's more prominent than it ever was before. It's more prominent, it's more clear to see that this is a problem. I could see this was a problem for ages, but it's like I think people are more clearly seeing it now. But again, I say I clearly could see this. I think everybody could see this clearly for the longest time. People would always say to me like, LT, this has been an issue with the community for a long time and everybody knows it. It's like, yeah, exactly, right? But nobody ever wants to do anything about it. Nobody wants to talk about it to any extensive degree. You kind of make mention here and there, but people focus so much on all these other elements in the game. And I actually feel like, trying to encourage the community to sort of have these more thought out battles, these more kind of team play orientated battles. I know everybody's gonna be like, LT, you've been talking about this forever. Yeah, I know, but it's more about my thinking on this has changed. The way the community feels to me now, like I've said before, you just kind of, there's a real malaise. I've seen that word used a lot in actually comments from some of you guys this week as well, malaise, like where just people kind of feel really whatever about that. There's no tension, there's nothing to strive for. Even when you're unlocking weapons, doing achievements, whatever, it just feels very whatever. And again, I've heard that from many people recently as well when I've been talking around some of these issues. And I think it's because you've lost that. You've kind of lost that real feeling, that drive. It just feels like I go from here to here to here. I kill this guy, I kill this guy. I go from here to here. I kill this guy, I kill this guy. It just feels very kind of rinse, repeat. It feels very kind of bland. It feels very just kind of whatever. There doesn't feel any tension. And I feel a lot of that can be down to player count, but I think also a lot of it can be down to, like I've said this before, if you look at any scoreboard, every round that you play, the top 4 guys are carrying that team by a wide margin. It's usually like the top 4 or 5 players have got 75% of the team score. No exaggeration there. It's like, it's bonkers. Like, you look in any gameplay, and that should be a significant marker for you of kind of how people are performing in this game. The skill level, and I don't care to say this, you know, the skill level of players in Battlefield has dropped way down. Now look, like I said on the previous video before, you know, I don't qualify myself as like the best Battlefield player or the best player when it comes to gunplay. Not at all. You know, in fact, I've never said that. And in the past, I think I've had comments on Battlefield videos, even when I was doing a lot of Battlefield videos, people saying like, oh, you think you know it all, tall, LT, blah, blah, blah. Never said that. You know, like I don't put myself up there as like this top, you know, sort of clutch Battlefield player, whatever. It's like, no, I think I'm a pretty middle of the road Battlefield player, but I'm a Battlefield player that, you know, a lot of people associate me with sort of being able to run good team play and pushing my squad forward and, you know, getting objectives done. That's where I've always been at. But like I say, if you just look, just go any gameplay, you guys know this, you play the game, you know, if you go to any round, look at the scoreboard, look at how it's playing out, you know, you do not see a kind of balance in terms of the kind of 75% of each team. There's a few players carrying it. So addressing that and trying to rebalance and try to work out like, okay, how can we encourage this kind of thing? Whether it's some kind of ladder system. If you had a ladder system and you were playing ranked play, theoretically it should improve the gameplay experience for everybody, whether you're a low skill or high skill player, because it should balance it up. It should make it improve that tension, really kind of, you know, bring your focus in so that you have to really battle hard for every step of the way, you know, and those are the most exciting games. So that's my question for today, guys, is, you know, should something be done to address this issue? Because it's obviously not something that will change or something that will go away. This is something that exists now. You know, I think I was actually speaking to Drewski, Operator Drewski this week, and he made a really, really good point. What he said was, everybody has Battlefield now, you know, and I was like, oh my God, that's an amazing point. Because when you think about it, when you go back even to Battlefield 3, you kind of like had Battlefield players, you know? You had people that played Battlefield and that was their thing, and then you had people who played other different FPS, you know? But now, like he's rightly said, everybody owns Battlefield. You ask someone who's like an FPS player, they'll own it. They might not have it installed, but they will own it. And that is a pretty big thing, you know, when you really think about that. It just shows how much the community, the audience for this game has exploded. And it's no bad thing in a way to have like a mass audience for your game. Shows it's popular, shows people like it. But I personally feel like a lot more could be done, and I've said this for ages, to kind of encourage people to really focus in on the core. Now again, a lot of people disagree with me, and a lot of people in the past have said things like, hey LT, don't tell people how to play, let people do whatever they want to, blah 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 blah. Yeah, you know, well exactly, that's the whole thing. If you have a ladder system, you can play however you want to play, but you're not going to get that higher skill if you don't focus on the core elements of the game, which is like, you know, having a strong KD, because having a KD is important, having a strong KD and focusing on the objective at the same time. So all of the stats around your kind of win-loss and your score ratios and all those kind of things, how helpful are you as a teammate? It would have to take like a holistic view in terms of, you know, achieving your skill, which it already does, and then working out along those lines. But again, you know, maybe depending on what teams you're stacked up, I don't know, I'm not big on kind of these algorithms and how this stuff would work, but if you could kind of focus in and get that sorted out so it had a strong ladder system, then I think just, you know, if people want to dick around, screw around, piss about, fine, you know, because you're going to end up as a low skill player who's just pissing about doing whatever. Fine, you go do that in your low rank, bottom of the barrel tier stuff, you go do that. And then the other players who want to focus on really strong core gameplay and skill, they'll be in those ranked gameplay sessions having strong gameplay. It's the best of both worlds, you know, everybody wins. So that's kind of where I would like to be at. If you guys have a better idea on how to solve this issue in terms of how to kind of bring up the gameplay, the actual game experience quality for everybody, given the state of affairs with this gigantic audience, please drop that down in the comments below, discuss around this issue, and I'll include your comments on the next Below the Line. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.